I'm Tim. Welcome to What You Want. Thanks for logging on. Today we are looking at one of the longest running staples of the Officine Panerai luxury watch catalog. This is the Panerai Luminor Submersible PAM 25, 44 millimeters in titanium. This watch, originally debuting in 1998, right at the beginning of the Vendome Richemont luxury ownership era at Panerai, nevertheless ran through 2013, making it one of the best received and most successful, and I should say, longest running Panerai references, and it's easy to see why. Now, you'll see that as a submersible, it is a true modern dive watch. Now, 1936 brought us the first Panerai combat dive watches, using what today we would call the radiomere case, but as of 1996, now on the civilian market, the bar had moved, and the definition of the dive watch had been more or less made official by the ISO, the International Standards Organization. Under 6425, there is a definition of a dive watch, everything from a constant seconds indicator to a unidirectional rotating bezel for tracking dive time, to at least 100 meters of water resistance, as well as measures of shock resistance, are all part of the ISO 6425. And the Panerai Luminor Submersible PAM 25 meets them. So in a very real sense, this watch, which draws styling cues from the 1956 Egiziano reference of the Panerai military days, as well as the 1,000 meter prototype Millimetri built by Panerai at the tail end of its military production in the 80s. You can see them in this 44 millimeter rotating bezel case. But the watch also has a charm and really an aesthetic all of its own, because more than anything else, this watch draws its essential look from the 1993 so-called Betterini Panerai Luminor case. So it has the look of that icon, but it has modern dive watch versatility and toughness. In a lot of ways, it gives you all of the capability of something like a Panerai Luminor with the toughness under the surface of something like a Rolex Submariner or an Omega Seamaster, with a couple of nods to history along the way. Now you can see on my wrist, which is 6.3 inches in circumference, 16 centimeters, the watch actually sits nicely, although it has a lot more visual presence than a conventional fixed bezel Luminor. It actually doesn't feel or look any bigger on the wrist. Now granted, you have a little bit less clearance under a long sleeve, but you actually get some of the practicality back because that bezel is so dramatically sloped from the inside to the outside, so some sleeves, not the tightest of the tight, but casual wear, will slope up and over the bezel of this watch with relatively little obstruction. Now, because it is titanium, the PAM 24, a contemporary of this watch, was steel, but because this one's titanium, it's got a unique look to it. Brushed titanium over time takes on a little bit of a patina. Each one gains its own unique character, and the graining of the metal has elements of blue, gray, slate, silver, chrome, almost even a little bit of bronze. You can see all of these tones mixed in, and over time each one becomes individually distinctive. But beyond that, the heft on the wrist of the titanium case is very minimal. Now, on a rubber strap, you see this natural vulcanized rubber strap. It's a Panerai OEM piece that comes with the watch. But I would say that because the case itself is titanium, because the pin buckle is titanium, because the strap is relatively light and supple, on the wrist it feels no heavier than my old 41 millimeter Omega Seamaster Professional 300 meter, James Bond reference. So I'm comparing this 44 dive watch to a 41 Omega. Now most people know the Omega, most people know the pre-super case Rolex Submariner, the 5-digit reference, the 16610. So if you're familiar with either of those two watches, rest assured the PAM 25 feels about that heavy on the wrist. And because it's not that top heavy, the titanium doesn't weigh that much, the buckle and the strap are enough to counterweight it, so it doesn't have a tendency to want to capsize on the wrist. Very comfortable. Again, the only reservations I might have would be if you're a lefty and you're going to wear it backwards or on the opposite hand. The crown guard might be a little bit of an impediment, but that's why they invented destros. Now the bottom line is that the PAM 25 and the 24 are thematically similar as dive watches, but they do have a key aesthetic difference in as much as the 25 has that distinctive titanium grain to it and titanium hue, as well as a hobnail dial. Now I'm going to try to see if I can get the light to reflect on that hobnail dial. but it's actually an inverted hobnail. So it has that waffle cut or tapisserie pattern that you may be familiar with from generations of Audemars Piguet Royal Oaks, but it's inverted, so it's more like a true waffle. It has little indentations rather than ridged, raised square portions, and it plays beautifully. It adds a lot of, I think, visual animation to a dial that's large and might otherwise be a bit austere without that extra element of texture. The watch also has another unconventional feature for a Panerai Luminor, in as much as most of the indexes are actually applied, so they are metal that has been loomed and then hand applied to the dial, and you have what are called sausage Arabic numerals at 12 and 6. Now, the Panerai heritage is in sandwich dials, or a loomed disc with a stencil on top of it showing the loom through the stenciled holes. When you have actual painted numerals on a Panerai watch, or painted indices, for those who prefer, they are interchangeable. I know I've been called out on that, but I'm going to clarify. They're interchangeable. When you have painted on indices or numerals, that's generally referred to as the sausage treatment on a Panerai, because rather than having that sunken look of a sandwich dial, you have a raised look of a big, thick block of loom. And that's what you have here. It adds a lot of character to the watch, and the small second subdial at 9 o'clock and the date under the Cyclops eye, an inverted Cyclops eye, I'll mention. It doesn't actually protrude above the crystal as on a Rolex. But those two features add a lot of utility to the watch. This could be your everyday watch. Between the convenience of having a date, having constant seconds for reference, having an automatic winding movement, I'll get to that in a moment, as well as the general durability, the black and white fundamental color palette, and the fact that you have this unidirectional bezel to time short intervals up to an hour, this could be your only watch. It plays well with just about everything except the tightest of dress cuffs, and in an era when the dive watch is, for better or for worse, accepted as an upscale accessory, it would look no more out of place than any other high-end sports watch if worn with formal attire. At the beach, in the pool, on vacation, in the sand, playing rough, it has no equal. And a big part of that is the movement inside the case. Now, this is Panerai's caliber OP3. It's a modified Valjoux 7750, which you know is a chronograph, but in this case, Panerai has removed the chronograph mechanisms, leaving only the automatic winding COSC certified chronometer base movement. It is very tough. With a 42-hour power reserve, it also hacks, which means when you pull the crown out, it actually stops the balance and allows you to synchronize it precisely to a reference timer. This is exactly how Panerai did things in the old days. First, using the Rolex Codebert pocket watch movement, the caliber 618, and later on, moving to the Angelus SF240 8-day movement, Panerai was always a company that specialized in highly legible, highly durable, professional instruments, and it continues with the PAM 25 Luminor Submersible. What's inside is every inch as butch and durable as the case itself. It lives up to the promise of this face. I also want to give a shout out to the accessory set that comes with this watch, because when you're buying a watch that's well known as a standard in a catalog, that's emblematic of its brand, you feel like you're getting something of real recognized value, of lasting importance, and this is an important reference to Panerai, so you want to make sure that you have all the documentation to support this collector's piece for the long term. And this one does have all of the toys, lots of goodies. You get a textile strap with Velcro retention and contrasting yellow Panerai stitch and logo, so if you do want to go with something even more supple than the rubber strap, perhaps if you want something with just a little bit more span to fit over a wetsuit, or even over cold weather gear if you wanted to wear the watch out in the snow, the bottom line is you have that second option, and the watch comes with the jeweler's tool, originally included with the PAM 25 Luminor Submersible kit, so not only can you strap out the 24mm wide rubber and textile Velcro strap, but if you're into strap swapping, dressing your watch with new shoes, that's half the fun of owning a Panerai. This watch gets you started with 2 straps and a jeweler's tool, so you can do it all at home without having to take the watch to the jeweler. The original COSC certificate for the Panerai caliber OP3 automatic caliber is here. It even has the original warranty cards, instruction manual, and to keep your watch handsome, a polishing cloth. If all that sounds good to you, this Panerai Luminor Submersible PAM 25 44mm in titanium just may be the watch you want.